First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my brother his problems are not my problem? I, 30 female, have a brother, 33 male, and we grew up close. Our relationship hit a low point when he started dating my former school bully. It wasn't so much that I don't think people can grow and change, but when he told me regardless of what had happened or what she was like, he loved her and I had to deal with it and that was it. And I gave it a shot because I love my brother and didn't want to cause any drama in the family, but she hadn't grown all that much. And then when I got engaged to my husband, she made a big deal out of needing to be my maid of honor and it drove me crazy. She never apologized, yet acted like she was entitled to the role and attempted to make our wedding about her. For example, telling me what flowers she wanted, calling my choices dumb, saying I needed a dress that would hide parts of my body, what food she wanted, what color dress she wanted, telling me I needed to let her plan XYZ, and saying I wasn't allowed to have my best friend at the wedding party. I put my foot down and said she wasn't going to be my maid of honor, and I told her she couldn't bully me to get what she wanted like she could when we were kids. She thought I was being really extreme, and my brother told me I was a witch for not leaving the past in the past. They ended up not coming to my wedding. He didn't invite me to theirs, and we have been out of each other's lives ever since. I never met his kids, and he never met mine. It broke our parents' hearts, and it was hard at first. They struggled with their kids not having a relationship, and they struggled with the family being very divided, especially when grandkids came along, but they adjusted. When COVID hit, it hit my brother and his family hard, and the troubles just seemed to keep coming. He started a GoFundMe at some point, and when that failed and he exhausted all the help our parents could give, he reached out to me. At first, he said he wanted to make amends, but then the very next day of making amends, he asked me for money and babysitting. I told him no. He said he and his wife were having a lot of financial problems, and that I owed it to him and his family, that family should help each other when they have problems, and he would do it for me. I told him that his problems were not my problems, and whatever help he would have gotten from me ended when he let his wife treat me like crap and then called me a witch for standing up for myself. Some of the extended family are now saying I'm an a-hole, and I should help my brother no matter what issues we have between us, etc., etc. Part of me wonders if I should help. The other part of me is saying he doesn't deserve anything from me. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. He only wants to use you. Can't agree more. He just wants to use you for money and babysitting. Not the a-hole. He is only apologizing to get help from you. That isn't sincere or real. Now, you could decide to give him some cash to help him out in the spirit of family, but understand that you will never be paid back, and that his wife will continue to treat you badly. If your financial situation is such that you can just give some money and continue to be no contact, then do it if you want to be the bigger person. But don't worry about it if you'd rather not. Not the a-hole. If his wife truly had changed, she wouldn't be a bully again, and wouldn't try to make your life events hers. And it's always easy to claim that you are family when it's convenient to them, but not make an effort for others. If he wasn't a big part of your life until now, he certainly doesn't have to be after. Life goes on without them and their pressure. You don't need the stress. The brother saying Opie should let the past be in the past? She tried. The bully brought it with her in the present. Not the a-hole. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to give up my place for my brother and his family? My 29, brother 40, his wife 34 and his 2 kids, 6 male and 7 female, live in with his in-laws in their home. Pandemic has been hard for everyone. Things were getting rocky over at my brother's in-laws' home because they couldn't agree on how to react to COVID. And my brother's in-laws are not taking precautions as they should and got into a huge fight with my brother and sister-in-law. My brother and my sister-in-law starts venting to our family about their word for the kids and wanting to move out, but they don't want to spend rent money. They kept asking if they can come over. We live in a small 1-bed, 1-bath, and after hearing about my brother's in-laws' reckless stories of not taking precautions, I told them it's not safe to come over to my place. Suddenly, I have all my other brother and my mom telling me that I should give up my 1-bed, 1-bath apartment that I'm sharing with my partner and our cat and dogs to my brother's family temporarily and move in with my family or my partner's family. Like they want us to pack 2 bags and leave everything there. Bed, couch, our belongings, appliances, etc. I told them that they're all crazy and ridiculous, and it's the stupidest thing I've heard. Even if I was crazy enough to go along, I share this home with my partner, and I would never want to put him in the position of making him move out of his own home. In addition, we both work from home and are on meetings all day, so no, moving anywhere that's not just our own place is not sustainable. It's not like my brother and his wife are jobless and poor. They have great jobs, and they've made a few investments, including homes. They can easily go rent any homes they want, and I even looked up apartments near me that were the same price. Yet, my brother wants my home because they can go and leave as wanted and not commit to a contract. I've been a bit torn because it's me against my family, and I feel like I'm being selfish, thinking only about my own well-being and not caring about theirs or my nephews/nieces. Am I the a-hole? Edit 1. For those who ask about my family's dynamic, my brother is the golden child. I'm 1 out of the 5 and he's the only one who's married with kids, hence makes him much more of the center of attention. I didn't even bring it up to my partner because I don't want him to hate my family or think they're crazy. Agree they are in this case. But he sensed that I'm stressing since I've been baking cookies non-stop for 2 nights now. My parents doesn't want to take them in because sister-in-law is an essential worker and goes into work every day. More risk of COVID. I've forgotten left this out, but the suggestion was that I give my nieces and nephews $700 to $1,000 a month while they stay at my place, and my mom and brother will help them with the rest of the rent. So no, I guess they won't be paying for the rent. I don't know why they think my brother and his wife are poor when they have much more money than I do as a couple. Now for the top comments. What the actual hell? No, you're not the a-hole. Your spoiled brother wants to take over your place and not pay anything while he does so. Do you think it's only going to be a couple weeks? He will milk that situation for as long as he can get away with it. Meanwhile, you are paying for a place you're not living in. Top it all off using your and your partner's things. Nope. Don't even engage on the subject anymore. The decision is made. Your mind will not be changed. Bro needs to suck it up and do what everyone else does. Get his own place on his own dime. Jeez. Not the a-hole, and what? They want you to give up your home along with most of your belongings, temporarily, so that your brother's family doesn't have to rent a house? Are you in the Twilight Zone? Not the a-hole. That's the most ridiculous request I've ever heard. Tell them to get their own place or deal with where they are at. They don't get priority over your place because they suddenly want it. Your parents are a-holes too for backing them up. They're choosy beggars and entitled people. No decent person would ask or approve this. My brother and my sister-in-law starts venting to our family about their word for the kids and wanting to move out, but they don't want to spend rent money. Has anyone welcomed them to adult life? I don't want to spend money on rent/mortgage payments either, but I do like having a roof over my head and space that I can control. Not the a-hole, by the way. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my little sister parenting isn't all sunshines and rainbows? My little sister, 26, has been thinking about having children with her husband for a while, but has been really unsure. Our parents and his parents have all been pushing it, and I've finally decided to step in to tell them what parenting was actually like. I basically explained that while great things do happen, there's a hell of a lot of rough stuff too. I also explained that they have to be prepared for everything. We have twins in our family. I have 2 sets, and we have brothers who are also 2 sets of twins. So they have to make sure they could handle 2 babies at once, or even 3 as there's a couple sets of triplets here and there. As well as the fact that autism is fairly common in our family. 3 of our brothers are diagnosed, 4 of my children are, and I'm currently working on getting my youngest daughter some form of help. Would they be able to cope with a disabled child? I want to be clear, I wasn't trying to steer them away from children, but so many parents go in expecting only good things and then become resentful of their children when they do normal children things. I also asked them if they'd researched any form of parenting. There's several types and you really should have an idea of how you want to raise your child. Communication is important and all of these things need to be discussed before the baby is created. Other things to take into account like, are you financially stable? Another thing I find is that people don't realize how much children cost because they cost a hell of a lot. You don't get to cop out of being a mother as soon as they turn 18. You will always be a mother no matter how old your child gets. After our in-depth discussion, they've decided a dog would probably be better. They don't think they have the time and have admitted they wouldn't be able to look after 2 babies at once or give a disabled child the support they need. I'm so proud of them for coming to this conclusion because we seriously have to think about the potential life here. Too many people have kids because that's what they're supposed to do. My parents think I've scared them off and are basically calling me a monster because I've terrified them into never having children. I don't think I have, but I do feel a little bad because they're almost totally averse now. I didn't think I was being harsh, just truthful, and I made sure to mention all the amazing things about parenthood too. I'm unsure though. My husband is glad that I told them, because he also really hates the normalized child neglect in today's media, but says I could have had several conversations rather than dumping all the information onto them at once, which I do agree with. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Absolutely not the a-hole. It is really good that you had a candid talk with them about what it is like. So many people rush into parenthood thinking that it is all good and that there are no hardships. They may not be ready for kids now, and after the talk they have time to financially plan a bit before taking that step, if they decide to. I honestly think more siblings should be like you and just have that honest chat so people don't get in over their heads before they are ready. On a side note, my wife and I are child-free. We took a look at Even Involved and decided that for us, it wasn't worth it. It's not like I don't want them to have children. I love kids. I have several of my own. But my husband and I made sure to plan everything and all our children get the best they can. I think all parents should do that because having another baby doesn't just affect you. It affects your current kids. You're not an a-hole. You gave a reality check when nobody else did. If they weren't ready for children because you told them the truth, then maybe they just shouldn't have children. This can't be overstated. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for asking my wife to apologize for having her maid of honor pour water on my mom at the wedding? My mom does have a history of acting out when things aren't about her. Nothing crazy like some of the stuff I've read on here, but she will sulk and be difficult. My mom and my wife have an okay relationship, but they don't really like each other. Before the wedding, my mom came to get ready and was very whiny and lay down on the hotel bed. She wanted everyone else to get their makeup done first and was pretty much falling asleep and getting pissy when she was asked to get up. The bridal party already didn't like my mom because she was demanding at the shower, so the maid of honor filled up a bucket of cold water, but she looked to my wife for permission. My wife nodded and admits that she thought it was funny. Now, pranks are pretty okay in my family, but my mom wasn't going to take a prank from my wife well anyway. Once they threw the water on her, they immediately knew something was wrong. My mom was shivering, teeth chattering, and could barely stand up. Someone ran to get my dad, who wasn't surprised because she apparently hadn't been feeling well for a while and had a doctor's appointment. When we got to the hotel room, he demanded to know why she was wet. My wife told him, and he cussed her out. He took my mom to the emergency room, and she had blood poisoning from an infection. They said she could have died if it had gone untreated much longer. My father currently hates my wife and won't even speak to her, and my mom claims she's over it, but loves to tell everyone how they bullied her when she was near death. I asked my wife to apologize, and she got mad. My wife said she didn't actually pour it, and because of my mom's previous behavior, she thought she was faking. I asked her to just keep the peace, and now she is mad and says that isn't her job, and my dad needs to get over it. Everyone sucks here. Your father should have taken your mother to the hospital long before she got sepsis. Had a bridal party left her to sleep, she'd be dead now. That prank likely saved her life. Your wife shouldn't have had water thrown on your mother because she was being an a-hole about getting ready. They should have just left her. But remember, had they left her, your mother would have died on your wedding day. You suck, because you didn't shut down the horrible behavior from your mother the first time she started acting like a silky toddler because something wasn't about her. Came here to say this. Pouring a bucket of water on someone is way over the line. I wouldn't be surprised if there was more going on between your wife and mother than you saw or were told. It's the nuclear option, and being a bit sulky wouldn't do it. That being said, it's very lucky that it did happen because otherwise she would not have gotten the life-saving treatment she needed. Your dad needs to realize that this prank had a part in saving her life. Honestly, just take the win. She's alive. Everyone sucks here. Everyone sucks here. Literally, everyone. Your mom was being a mood. Your wife let her maid of honor pour a bucket of water on someone just before they attended a wedding. Who the hell does that? But regardless of all the crappiness, the blood poisoning had nothing to do with the prank. She had an infection already and should have been treated. You and your father are wrong to blame your wife for nearly killing your mom. It had nothing to do with the prank, which was stupid, childish, and pointless. Y'all need family therapy to get over this one. Ironically, the prank actually saved his mom's life. Everyone sucks here. The bucket didn't cause the blood poisoning or infection. Your mom wasn't taking care of herself and getting treated, so that's on her. She also sounds really unpleasant, and I don't blame your wife for being frustrated. The wedding should have been about the bride and groom, not groom's mom. Wife should have just handled things like an adult. It's pretty clear that mom wouldn't have found that funny, and pranks should be funny for everyone. Edit. A lot of people are picturing my mom as old and feeble. She was 44, and the water was poured before hair and makeup and the dress going on. Second, I am not going to debate be no contact. Neither my wife nor I want that or think it is warranted. That is our decision to make and not yours. Third, someone said I should add this. Also, my mom has an eating disorder and my wife knows. This was the bridal shower incident where she refused to eat, which they wouldn't let go and tried to force her to eat. My mom ended up shrieking hysterically about she wasn't going to eat and they can't make her. She whined about not wanting to go to the wedding but having to go to make my dad happy and how much she hates other people's weddings. She demanded someone bring her champagne because she was the mother of the groom. When she was told to buzz off, she whined about they need to get her something because she is faint from having that food shoved in her face. Then she went to the bathroom and called my dad, who made a joke about she should pull a fire alarm and end the shower. She returned and told my wife that my dad was going to set the place on fire, which is not what he said. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe. Am I the a-hole for convincing my grandpa to kick out my aunt and refusing to help him change his mind back? I'm 19 male, so when it comes to family disputes, my opinions are usually brushed off in a let the adults handle this type of way. But for the first time, someone older than me took my advice. My grandfather and I are great friends. I'm closer to him than to anyone else in my family, but that's not to say I'm not close with my parents and siblings. Grandpa and I just kind of vibe. That's why he listens to what I say more than anyone in my family would expect him to. He took me out to lunch last week, as a grandfather does with his favorite grandchild, half joking. And he was ranting about his witch of a daughter and each of the epic fights they got into this past month. My aunt really is horrible. Trying to explain her whole dynamic would put me well over the 3,000 character limit. To give you an idea, 2 months ago at my sister's birthday dinner, she screamed at my dad to screw himself and waved a steak knife around. This was a nice restaurant where she was eating for free. There's also that time when my mom was pregnant with me and my eloquent aunt said, "I hope you freaking miscarry that turd in your C-word." I don't really know what else to say. This woman is mean. Anyways, talking with my mouth full of cheeseburger, I asked my grandpa, why haven't you kicked her out or at least started charging rent? He thought and said, "Yeah, my 54-year-old daughter can throw me a few hundred per month to live in my house." We laughed because my aunt is not a very agreeable person, and that conversation going down would be an event worth witnessing. We discussed and I convinced him to demand rent, and if she refused, to give her the boot. I wasn't present for the argument itself, but it went down as we expected. It was so bad that the neighbors called the cops. Only the 3rd time that has happened. Anyways, most of my family is mad that I inserted myself into the situation. They see me as a little boy still whose opinion is irrelevant. Maybe they're right. I'm 19 and everyone else is 40 to 80. But I don't like watching my grandparents go through hell living with her, so I said what I said. But crap has hit the fan and now the entire family is divided. My grandpa has no intention of letting her back in, but my grandma wants him to. My mom is glad she's gone. Wonder why, right? And my dad doesn't like his sister very much, but he's worried all this drama will bite our family in the butt. There have been consequences. In-laws have revoked Christmas vacations that hadn't even been sent out yet, so we've pulled their Thanksgiving invitations. You get the gist. It's a whole mess. Now, people think if I talk to my grandpa, I can convince him to let her back in. They're probably right. I feel like I do have that influence. But so far, I've refused, because my grandpa's never been happier, and my grandma's starting to come around. Outside opinions, please. Now for the top comments. Not Day Hall. Dude, she's 54. Why the heck is she living with her parents? She is definitely jealous of your mom and probably has nothing better to do than stir up drama. You said what everyone was thinking, so don't feel bad about it. Oh yes, she's jealous. She's more jealous of my dad because he's her 6 years younger brother who's extremely successful and has a family of his own, while she slaves away at a job she hates. He has everything she can't have, and she's pissed about it. That being said, even my dad tolerates her for the sake of the family. The fact that her own brother and my father wants her back in their house is really what's making me question what's good for the whole family. Your father's advocating she go back to Grandpa, but I don't see him offering to take her in. It's funny that so many people seem to think you had no right to involve yourself in something that's not your business, while simultaneously doing the same. The only two people whose opinion matters here is Grandpa and Grandma. Grandpa's clearly got his mind made up, and it sounds like Grandma's starting to enjoy the fact that she's gone too. Not Day-Hole. You aren't a hypnotist, and your grandpa's all his mental faculties. You didn't make him do anything. You can't make him do it. Why does this awful woman have control over half the family? She's actually nice to most of my extended family. Her rage really shines only in her immediate family. Somehow, over the years, she has befriended everyone who doesn't share her blood. At age 54, after decades of not paying rent for her entire adult life because she lived with her parents, that aunt should have quite a lot in savings. What strikes me about the story is how your grandparents might be vulnerable to elder abuse. Not saying that's what was happening, but it certainly sounds like she was taking advantage of them. Not Day-Hall if your grandparents are happier. It was their decision. The flying monkeys should butt out. She mistreats the hell out of them, but they fight back too. Both my grandma and grandpa grew up with very few families, so they have come to put family before everything, even when it defies all logic. It's taken a lot to get to this point, believe me. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for making my parents leave my house? I, 43 male, was finally able to purchase a neat 3 bedrooms, 2 baths house under my name for about 3 years now. Thankful for their support in order for me to live my best life, I agreed to let my parents move in with me after they decided to sell the smaller mobile home we previously lived in. However, one of the main boundaries I've set with them is that I did not want my sister, 40 female, Mackenzie, to enter my home. She and I had problems solving our fights and arguments growing up, which led to resentment, and we ultimately stopped speaking to each other by the time I graduated high school. I've tried to bury the hatchet numerous times in between, hoping that we could reach an understanding and get back in neutral terms, but Mackenzie never bothered to respond. So I left it at that, and minimized contact as well. If my parents wanted to see her, they would have to drive up to visit her themselves. I would drive them up there, or at the very least, they'd tell her to drop anything off in the driveway for them to pick up. But the biggest rule set was that she would not step into my house no matter what. By extension, this resulted in a distant relationship with my nephews/niece and brother-in-law, but I tried to be respectful when I happened to see them. Now, almost every other weekend, after policies lighten up and getting our vaccinations, I meet up with several of my long-term high school buddies and stay over at one of their places. Later that same evening I left, I realized I forgot to bring over some new wine that I bought for us all to share. And since we all lived a moderate distance from each other, I figured a 15-minute drive wouldn't kill me. But to my surprise, there's an extra car in my driveway. I recognized the license plate, and my heart dropped. I stormed into the house, and lo and behold, Mackenzie was here, and her children were playing with my dogs in the backyard. I was furious, and demanded my parents to explain why they allowed my sister to be inside. They reasoned that she was only in the dining room and wasn't doing anything wrong. I told Mackenzie to take her kids and leave, but not before she scoffed and called me a pathetic and selfish loner. My parents were mad at me for forcing Mackenzie to leave, But I argued that they broke the only single, most important boundary asked of them. They said I was overreacting and that my house was also their shared space. They even said we were all still family, but I disagreed strongly with that statement because Mackenzie and I never solved our estranged relationship. I asked them if they had done this behind my back the times when I wasn't home, and they admitted to doing so. I felt overwhelmed and told them they were going to stay at Mackenzie's place for an indefinite amount of time. They apologized and told me to just get over it, but I refused. So they packed several of their belongings and I drove them up to my sister's house while getting an earful on the entire way there. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You are justified in having this boundary, and it's your house. If they wanted to see your sister, they could either have objected when you made the boundary, rather than sneaking behind your back, or just not move in with you. If the parents believed the rule was inconsequential and unimportant, they wouldn't have sneaked. In my opinion, this demonstrates they did it knowing full well it was wrong and knowing it broke a boundary. Not the a-hole at all. Not the a-hole. You might have to change your locks. Somehow your parents equated moving in with "we live here now, so it's our house too, so we can do what we want." That's not how it works. They apologized and told me to just get over it. Haha, that's not what an apology is. They're disrespectful. Not the a-hole. My house, my rules. If I let you live in my house, you do not have to like my rules. But you will comply with them or you won't live there anymore. You made one rule. They ignored it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Not the a-hole. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother and his fiancée no? I recently moved in with my brother and his fiancée, trying to get my life back on track. They gave me a place to stay because I was in a new city with no money. Since then, I've bounced around a couple of jobs, and that has made paying bills a little difficult. But I managed to do so by getting a small loan from my mother. The job hunt was as much physical as it was digital. I was in several job finding sites all day putting in applications. When I wasn't on my phone, I was riding my bike for several miles around town putting in applications. When I got a job finally, I began work right away and worked as much as possible. The job pays weekly and rent was due soon. I communicated with my brother that I didn't know how much my check would be, and that I didn't know if it would be enough to cover my portion of the bills. Surprise, it wasn't. Thankfully, my mother lent me the rest of my rent. I make sure to let everyone in the house understand my situation. Fast forward 2 weeks and fiancé tells me there is an additional $700 charge added to rent and I have to pay 1/3 of it. After a couple questions, she explains to me that it's because their dogs have done severe damage to the house/yard, and the landlord wants a new security deposit. A day later, I was mulling that over in my head and decided it was not fair for me to pay for the damages caused by their dogs. The damage was done prior to me living there and was caused by their pets. Heavily damaged doors and frames chewed up, blinds chewed to bits, the stench of the dog waste throughout the house, and a yard that had been ripped up. As I explained to them that I think it's unfair, then it happens. Fiancé tells me it doesn't matter. I live in her house and have to pay for the damages her dogs caused, and my brother won't even acknowledge me. I firmly state that I disagree, and that I won't be paying. She smiles and says, "You can't even pay rent. You get mommy to pay it for you. Pay me or I'll kick you out." I retort, "Yes, I'm in debt to her, not you. Go ahead and kick me out." Cast a glance to my brother who is just sitting and staring at me without a word to say. She says, "Okay, you're out." Am I the a-hole for not agreeing to pay for damages? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. The dog's damage has nothing to do with you. Unfortunately, it sounds like you will need to find a new place to live, but hopefully you won't have to deal with such nonsense and passive-aggressive behavior. You've done nothing wrong. Not only is it not Opie's problem, but it sounds like Opie's paying rent to live in a dump. Even the landlord is trying to be proactive about the obvious damage in his building. I wouldn't be surprised if his rent payment was inflated too. If they're comfortable being that blatant and taking advantage of him, what's to stop them from telling him that his share of bills is $100 or $200 higher than it actually should be? Not the a-hole. They were basically trying to use you to pay for their screw-ups. Also, I don't know your relationship with your mother, but when you're stable in your finances, I'd go pretty big for her next birthday/Mother's Day. She sounds like a very reliable person. She's a great mom and a great friend. Love her to the moon and back, and I do as much for her as I can. Not the a-hole. You shouldn't have to pay that. You're only renting the space where you sleep pretty much, right? Not the entire apartment. That is not your responsibility. The fiancé is just being a witch. But the problem is that now they're kicking you out. Either find your own place or go with your mom. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for cutting off my housemate's internet when he refused to pay for it? I've 25 male been living with my housemate 24 male for a little over a year now, and I've known him since college. We pay our rent separately to our landlord, and this place is great. Like, the only monthly expenses other than the rent is a cell phone bill, internet bill, and of course food, as the electricity and water are covered by the landlord. I don't know how or why, but I'm not complaining. He is a pretty chill landlord. He's retired, and I get the sense that he just doesn't care anymore. My housemates and I agreed to split the cost of the internet bill, so we pay roughly $50 each. Or at least it should be that way. But a couple of months back, he decided he didn't want to pay his share of the internet, because I actually pay less than him in rent. Again, I don't know why, but I pay about $40 less than him. It's been an ongoing issue, but I'm not okay with him just not paying his share of the internet, especially for such a flimsy reason. The other day, I asked him again for the total amount he owed, which by this time was $150, and he told me to buzz off. I'm tired of you constantly nagging me. You save a ton with rent. Can't you help me out a little? $40 in rent difference, and this shoved a stick so far up his butt he doesn't want to give me my money? Fine. So I said, okay, logged into my router settings, and disconnected all of his devices, and changed the password. I just did not give a crap anymore. He came demanding I turn the internet back on. I told him no, unless he gave me the money owed. He started begging and said he had a meeting today that was really important. So I said, must not be that important if $150 is too much for you to give me for internet. You have your phone, hotspot from that. He left after that. Now there's so much tension in the house. Enough where I can cut it with a knife. Then he went off and complained to mutual friends. And a lot of them took his side in saying that I'm not a good friend, and that I shouldn't be blackmailing him like this. And I told them that I don't give a crap. If he wants to play games for a $40 rent discrepancy, I'm down to play games. And unless he gives me now $200 for messing with me, I'm not letting him use my internet. Now a few took my side saying the dude is a mooch, and was just itching to find any way to save any amount of money. So I'm turning to you all. Am I the a-hole? Sorry for the overall tone of the post, but I'm pissed. Not the a-hole. Seems like he's just used to getting what he wants, and you gave him a wake-up call. Stand your ground and get your money. You're not his parent, you don't have to pay his bills. Especially if you let it add up to this amount without having a talk with you first if he needed help. At first he said, I'll get you the money ASAP, or can you wait until my next pay? To eventually what was described above in the post. And I'm just here, feeling I have egg on my face for letting it go so long. Everyone has their breaking point. This is a classic case of mistaking kindness for weakness, and your roommate is learning that the hard way. Not the a-hole. He'd get shut off if he was paying the ISP directly. Just because he's a friend doesn't mean he can play by different rules than everyone else. Yes, but his underlying motivation, after the initial song and dance, for not paying, is because OP pays $40 less in rent, apparently. That analogy doesn't really work. Not the a-hole. Your rent is completely separate from your internet service. He agreed to pay half and hasn't been doing that. Your mistake was in allowing him to go 2 months without paying. If your roommate has a problem with the difference in rental charges, he should take it up with the landlord. Definitely feels like I have egg on my face now for letting 2 months go by. Housemate. I don't want to pay for my share of the internet. Opie shuts off his internet access. Housemate. Surprise Pikachu face. Not the a-hole. You got yourself a mooch on your hands, my dude. Rent should be completely separate from shared bills. Also, where do you live? If you're in GTA, I'll be your roommate in a heartbeat if all I had to do was give you $50 and pay rent. Y'all are blessed to find such a place. Am I the a-hole for pretending to not know my grandparents? Just for background information, when I, 19 female, was 4 years old, my dad died. At his funeral, his parents told me, my mom, 28-year-old at the time, and my sister, 6-year-old at the time, that we are the reasons he died. They also kept his life insurance money that was supposed to go to my sister and I. Since then, my grandparents have refused contact with all three of us, and the only form of contact I have with them is them sending me and my sister a $50 gift card to Walmart twice a year, birthdays and Christmas. The last time I received a gift card from them was on my 10th birthday, and it was for Babies R Us. I haven't heard from them since. They live in Florida and I live in New York, so I have no chance of seeing them either. At least I thought. Flash forward to present day, 3 days ago now, I was in Walmart near my house to get a few things for my mom. When I walked past the pharmacy, I saw my dad's parents. I tried to hide in the aisles because I didn't want confrontation, but they saw me anyway. They started asking me a bunch of questions about my family's financial situations in college and if I'm married yet, stuff like that. I responded by saying, I have no idea who you are. They looked angry and shocked by this, but told me who they were, and after that, I told them I had no desire to talk to them and didn't have anything to say to them anyway. I started walking away and was just going to leave it alone, but then they said, "You're so disrespectful. We are your grandparents, and you need to treat us better than that. Your mom did a terrible job with you." After that comment, I turned around and went off on them. I said something along the lines of, "You are not my grandparents because you abandoned my sister and I after telling us we are the reasons for our dad's death, and you stole his money from us. Don't you dare talk about my mother either, because she did an amazing job with us without any help from you too. I'd be happy with never seeing your sorry faces again." I started to walk away again and heard my grandmother start to cry, but I kept walking. Am I the a-hole? They're technically my grandparents, but they did so many things that are unforgivable. Edit. Also, my dad was active in the military when he passed. The VA has been paying my sister and I a certain amount every month since his passing. I did not have access to this money until a year ago when I turned 18. To me, it doesn't seem like a coincidence that they showed up only a little while after I gained access to that money. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. They are essentially strangers to you, of their own volition. You reap what you sow. I couldn't have said it better myself. Not the a-hole. Indeed, I really admire Opie for knowing exactly what to say in that moment. I think fate put them together so Opie could set the record straight. Not the a-hole for sure. Not the a-hole, and for my money, I'd say they were quizzing you about your education and finances and marital status, because they are either in or about to be in dire straits money-wise. If they wanted to know all of that, they should have stayed in touch and not treated you so horribly. They live in Florida, but go to a Walmart in New York for their prescriptions? Right. I'd bet $1 they were going to try to hit you and your family up for money or lodging or something. That's what I was thinking. The only reason they'd have to come up to New York is for my aunt, Dad's sister. But even then, she lives an hour or so from me, and the Walmart where I saw them was 5 minutes down the road from my house. So why were they there, you know? Not the a-hole. If anything, you were nicer than they deserved. If they were so interested, where the hell were they for the last 15 years? Not the a-hole. What do they expect after literally stealing your inheritance completely and not contacting you with at least a phone call for literal years? Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for leaving a family gathering and insisting mother-in-law apologize over M&Ms? My wife, 34 female, and I, 31 female, have 2 wonderful children, 4 male and 4 female twins. They were conceived with my wife's eggs, a known sperm donor, and I carried/birthed them. Both kids ended up being practical clones of my wife, so it's pretty clear to everyone who contributed the genetic material. My in-laws had everyone together at their house earlier this month. We're all vaccinated, and the weather was nice, so we had a barbecue. My kids were outside playing with their cousins, and sister-in-law, mother-in-law, and I were chatting in the kitchen. At one point, my twins run inside from playing and ask if they can have some M&Ms that they see on the counter. I tell them, no, we'll be eating in 15 minutes, you can have them after dinner. They run back out and mother-in-law excuses herself to go outside. A little bit later, sister-in-law and I get the call that food is ready. So we go outside, and I see my kids each have a little cup full of M&Ms that they are eating. I tell my kids that they knew they were not supposed to be eating those and took away the cups. Mother-in-law comes over and says that she gave them the M&Ms and they can have them. To which I replied, no, they can't. It's dinner time. You were there when I told them no. Mother-in-law says again that they can have some chocolate, it's fine, and tries to take the cups out of my hands. We go back and forth with no, yes, no for a minute, prompting wife to start walking over to us, just in time to hear mother-in-law say, in front of my kids, I'm saying it's okay. They aren't even your kids. They're wife's. Just give them the chocolate. Wife had mother-in-law repeat herself and said something like, absolutely not. We're leaving. I put the M&Ms on the nearest table, grabbed both my kids, who are now softly crying, and started to pack our stuff. The whole event erupted into chaos. Father-in-law screaming about the disrespect of us leaving, grandmother crying, brother-in-law and sister-in-law arguing with father-in-law, mother-in-law crying that her only daughter was abandoning her. It was a mess. After a couple hours at home, the kids seemed okay, but mother-in-law saying I'm not their mom really scared them. Wife spent about 4 hours on rotating phone calls with all of her family, from father-in-law screaming at her, mother-in-law crying over how it took her grandkids away over M&Ms, and made her out to be a bad grandma, brother-in-law trying to get into drama, grandmother depressed saying she would die without seeing her great-grandkids again. Wife's message to all of them was that mother-in-law needed to apologize to me and to our children for what she said. We made it clear that we would have no problem spending time with grandmother and brother-in-law's family, but we would not bring the kids around mother-in-law until she apologized. As you can guess, the apology has not happened, but the phone calls of guilt trips, yelling, and crying have not let up. I feel an apology is not even a big deal, and at this point, mother-in-law is making the choice not to see her grandkids. I want to hold firm, but I know how hard this all is on my wife, even if I really don't think it's my fault. Am I the a-hole for insisting on an apology? Not the a-hole. This was said specifically to inflict pain, to diminish your family. Even after an apology, not sure with that behavior I'd see her again. You birthed those kids. She knew exactly what it meant when she said it. Right? Over M&Ms, for Pete's sake. And it's not even about M&Ms. It's how she clearly doesn't respect/recognize Opie as a parent to her own children and will likely undermine her parental authority in the future. Not the a-hole. The argument wasn't over M&Ms. It was about mother-in-law disrespecting you as a parent. First by undermining you, and then by openly stating that she doesn't even consider you your children's parent, despite the fact that you grew them, birthed them, and are raising them. She implied that in her eyes, the only family that counts is genetics, not the people who are there for you every day, support you, protect you, and love you unconditionally. Her attitude is disgusting, and I'm so sorry she confused and frightened your children like that. She was 100% the a-hole. Just a cool little bit of info. The woman who carries the babies from donated eggs does have an effect on the baby's DNA. It has been found that the RNA of the birth mother interacts with the baby's DNA, turning on or off bits of the DNA. Not the a-hole. But please keep in mind that mother-in-law revealed how she really feels. She genuinely believes her parental rights supersede yours. And if you get some superficial apology, that's still a pretty lonely and scary place for you to be. You should definitely expect more than an apology. You need real contrition. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents not to raise their new child like they raised me? Before I was born, my parents had my older brother who sadly passed away of SIDS. Off the bat, they were trying to have another baby boy, and had my 2 older sisters before they had me. As the only boy, I was basically made a prince, and my sisters were pushed aside. Everything was about what I wanted. There was nothing I did that was ever wrong in their eyes, and anything to make me happy. Safe to say, I was a spoiled, entitled little brat that my sisters resented. That entitlement lasted until adulthood decided to hit me with a brutal reality that the world did not in fact revolve around me. A couple failed relationships later, I had to accept I was the problem and have tried to turn things around. I've been in therapy for a couple years to work out my problems and not be a total prick. My parents, by some miracle, decided to have a baby in their 50s. We're all shocked, but it's their lives, you know? Our little brother is a few months old, and finally we all got together to see him for the first time now that we're vaccinated. Later on in the day, I told my dad that I just hoped they'd do it different this time around. They asked me what I meant, and I pointed out like it was obvious. The way they treated me compared to how they did my sisters. Obviously, my problems are my own fault, and I take responsibility for my past actions. But the way I was raised is where a lot of those issues developed once I reached adulthood, and that negatively impacted my relationships. I'm 25 years old and only barely know mending my relationship with my sisters after years of dysfunction. My sisters chimed into the conversation too, and agreed they kinda messed up. All that was suggested was not to spoil our brother so much. Don't give in to every tantrum and actually discipline him. Our parents got pretty defensive quick, and we dropped the conversation. My dad has told me I had no right to critique their parenting, or make any suggestions that they do things any different when they never did anything wrong. This has really upset them, and they're pretty mad that we ganged up on them. Technically, I started it, so that's why I wanted to ask if maybe I took it too far bringing this up, and if I'm the a-hole. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Tell your dad that as a victim of their parenting, you have every right to critique it. That you are the one who decides if they did anything wrong, not them. Especially since they say they didn't do anything wrong, even if OP's proof. They very much did a lot wrong. Dad, we did nothing wrong. Opie, hello Dad, I'm nothing. From what you are telling us, not the a-hole. Because you criticized your parents out of concern for your little brother, not for retaliation or something. That your sisters are agreeing should let them see in theory that they are not as perfect as they think. Oh, and about the did nothing wrong part, you can also be wrong by doing nothing. You don't need to do something for that. Letting a child having their way and doing nothing, for example. So they may not have done anything, but the lack of parenting is there. You make a good point about the doing nothing. I agree with you there. Not the a-hole, if you're an adult, and your adult sisters also agree that your parents could have done a better job. The only acceptable response would be for them to take your critiques and learn from them. If your sisters agreed almost immediately after you brought it up, it means they've agreed this whole time, and each didn't want to be the first to say it. So don't feel bad that you sparked a necessary dialogue. And this is about the well-being and humanity of a newborn child, so you have every right to not want your baby brother to have the same problems you did, and every right to voice concerns based on your lived experiences. I hope that your parents do better this time around. At it, I'm also glad that you've made up with your sisters, because coming from an only girl, it can be absolutely infuriating when my parents treat my brothers like kings and me like a maid. Good on you for being better. I sure hope so. Obviously, not every single problem we develop later on in life is our parents' fault, but taking all this time to think back to our childhoods, there really was a lot of dysfunction, and I'd rather not end up with the same issues I've tried to overcome. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for exposing my parents' lies and damaging their reputation? I, 21 male, have a strained relationship with my parents. They are involved in pretty much every social event / circle in our city, be it church, school, clubs, etc. For them, what other people think is the most important thing. For that, they will lie about pretty much any bad thing that could potentially tarnish their standing, and have forced my sister, 24 female, and I to behave in certain ways or follow specific rules. Some examples. My sister and I were not allowed to play with certain kids in our school or neighborhood because their parents were in trade rather than academics. My parents forced me to stop talking to a really close friend in middle school because his parents got divorced. When I got caught smoking in high school, my parents made up a distant uncle with substance problems and told everyone he influenced me. My sister came home one day introducing her Spanish boyfriend to my parents. They didn't like that, so they told everyone the boyfriend is an exchange student that we are housing. My mother once made up a bunch of stuff about a neighboring couple. Stuff like her husband is cheating, she does it out contents to pay the bills. Of course, she always claims to have heard it from someone else, who heard it from someone else, etc. I could list plenty more, but there's text limit. Now recently, I was near my hometown visiting a friend, and I ran into the leader of a church group I was part of. I was pretty engaged in that group, so we sat down for a coffee and talked about the good old times. He asked me about my studies and how my fiancé is doing. I was confused and told him I'm not studying and don't have a fiancé. Turns out my parents made up a bunch of lies to cover the fact that I decided to go for an apprenticeship and turned out to be gay. One thing led to another, and together we went over a lot of incidences and stories from the past, with me exposing more and more lies. The results could be seen a few days later. My parents called me very angrily, asked me how could I do this to them. You ruined our lives. We can never talk to the neighbors again. I told them their entire reputation is built on lies and spreading rumors, that it is disgusting they even call themselves Christians at this point, and that I'm done being part of their little scheme. My sister later called me after Mom called her in tears. She's torn. On one side, she gets me, as she already gone minimal contact with my parents. On the other hand, it solved nothing but hurts my parents. Sounds like you didn't even know that you were exposing them until it was too late. Someone asks a question about your life, and you answered. It's your fault your parents didn't tell you what to say. A joke. Not today, Hull. Don't know if it changes your voting, but I was very much aware that the group leader would spill the beans. This is a small town, and gossip is his lifeblood. I knew he would not keep it to himself and that it would spread. Still doesn't mean your parents should lie to save their reputation. Your parents dug this hole for themselves. Now they're just being outed as racists, homophobes, and they don't like it. If you have to lie to have a good reputation, you don't have one. They deserve it. Not only that, but imagine the lives they, the parents, have already ruined. I'd be grateful to finally be vindicated over their BS. Not today, Hull. Consequences of their own actions, really. That's the best way to put it. You reap the seeds you sow.